great Ace Attorney. In a way, the greatest Ace Attorney, because there aren't any others. Except for Phoenix Wright, but he hasn't been born yet. He won't be born for another 80 years. So I think we had just gotten through the summation examination, summary, whatever. Yes, exactly. Wherein it was a bit strange. I don't really know what we did to convince some of the people, but basically what we established here is that Courtney Sith was previously Courtney Stevens, and she did the autopsy 10 years ago on the professor after he was executed in jail. And that somehow the fact that she was the person who performed the autopsy means that there may be some kind of link between her and Person Man, the guy, Drebber. That provided at least the tiniest little bit of a link to say, hey, we should keep the trial going because they may have cooperated in some way. No, because we're accusing her outright. Right, that was the thing. They were like, hey, so he couldn't have done this without an apprentice, it seems like. Or an accomplice, it seems like. We were like, yes, he did have an accomplice. It was Courtney Sith. Everybody's like, what? You don't have any proof of that. I'm like, no, but I will someday. A waxwork of the despicable professor, used as a body double for the victim in this quite extraordinary case. I must say it's extremely hard to believe the assertion could possibly be true. However, it would appear that it does at least warrant further investigation. It's the waxwork of the professor that links Mr. Drebber to Dr. Sith. Hey, I just said that. And I'm convinced that there's a special significance to that link. I don't know what you're hoping to prove, lad. I really don't. The truth, sir. By using evidence and testimony. If the court is to delve deeper into the alleged involvement of the waxwork in this case, then the prosecution calls for the owner of the model to be summoned as a witness. The owner? Madame Two Spells. Two Spells! I was wondering this whole time if he would ever get to say the name, so I could do just that. I really thought that Lord Van Zieks would object to this whole line of enquiry. Very well, I concur. Make arrangements for Madame Two Spells to appear as a witness with immediate effect. Listen carefully, my learned friend. Oh, yes? You should know that you are on the brink of opening Pandora's box. The court shall now adjourn for 45 minutes. During that time, the prosecution will summon the new witness and prepare her for taking the stand. Madame Two Spells. Yes, I shall see to it at once, my lord. Okay, so I could have gone another 30 seconds and we would have hit... could have hit the natural break point. Beep-beep-beep. There's certain UI sounds that actually, now that I think about it, have not changed. I mean, the music changes, and a bunch of... some sounds change. But, there's some that remain the same all the way from game one, I think. I feel like the... and even the, like, the cancel noise, the whoop. Perfection from game number 1 in the series.
Ah, the knight errant himself.
Oh, have you been watching from the gallery, Mr. Sholmes?
I've been on the edge of my seat the entire time. Courtroom trials are fascinating affairs, as a spectator at least.
I'm glad you've been enjoying yourself.
I have to ask. What on earth is going on? It makes no sense. What's this professor business all about? He doesn't look like any professor I've ever met before. Who even is he?
Ah, of course. You were in Germany already 10 years ago.
Yes, the professor.
When I I just realized, are they gonna introduce Moriarty to this? He was called Professor Moriarty, wasn't he? Because the Professor is certainly a strange name for a serial killer. I guess we'll find out.
When I discovered he was the one who had been abducted, a sense of foreboding stirred within me. But who knew the monster would come knocking at your door? My heartfelt sympathies. Ha 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 ha!
As it turns out, Lord Van Zieks is even more intimately tied to this case than any of us realized, isn't he? Yes, how true. His great friend from university in the dock.
And now, a waxwork of the killer who took his esteemed brother's life makes an appearance too. I imagine even the shrewd Mr. Reaper failed to foresee that kick in the teeth. An extraordinary move on your part, my dear fellow, to throw that in front of the man.
Make it sound deliberate. I can't help feeling that this professor case is really very puzzling.
Oh, yes? In what particular manner?
Well, there's Mr. Drebber, Dr. Sith, and Lord Van Zieks. It seems that everybody in the trial has a link to the case somehow.
Yes. In fact, I alone am not a member of the set. Though that leaves me as an empty set, all alone, with no intersection to any other.
Excuse me, said somebody. Oh, it's you! The real murderer. Dr. Sith.
Ah, Dr. Courtney Sith, née Stevens. Good day to you.
Hello, Sholmes. That was very shrewd of you.
What in particular, pray?
You requested that 10-year-old autopsy... that 10-year-old autopsy report from Gregson, didn't you?
Why would you assume such a thing?
Because Gregson told me. To think it's been 10 years. 10 years in the laboratory wielding my scalpel. I smell of nothing but corpses and disinfectant. A policeman on the jury had a lot to say about you as it happens, Dr. Sith. And I've accused you of being complicit in what happened. I'm hoping that you'll take the stand and tell the truth about what really happened. That certainly won't be possible. Lord Van Zieks won't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Strongheart has forbidden it.
Lord Strongheart?
The Pandora's box you were warned about is the Professor case. But please don't make the mistake of thinking you'll get any information about it out of me. But attempting to hide from the truth, that's cowardice. I've always fought crime in the way that I see fit. I have no regrets. None at all. Not even this tattoo. And that's all I came here to say. So, good day to you. Well, at least she wished us a good day. That's nice. She mentioned it too. This Pandora's box. Whatever does it all mean?
There's really no cause for concern, I assure you. When the trial resumes, the meaning will become all too apparent, whether you like it to or not. Huh? Now then, I believe it is almost time. I must make my way back to the public gallery. The edge of my seat awaits.
I think maybe you're enjoying yourself a little too much for a murder trial.
Ah yes, one word of warning before I go. If, in the course of the trial this afternoon, you perceive even a shadow of doubt about the truth, don't let it out of your sight. Pursue it like a dog with a bone. To the bitter end, you understand? Do not falter, whatever may come to pass.
But bones aren't bitter. Why would a dog chase after a bone with a bitter end? Alright, I understand. Thank you.
Good. I shall make myself scarce then. I purchased a bar of caramel. I purchased a bar of caramel earlier, so I shall be gnawing on that as you gnaw away at the truth.
What did that warning from Mr. Sholmes really mean, I wonder? Especially the bit about whatever may come to pass. It's time for the final chapter, then. I'm determined to find the truth, no matter what. It's just the wax statue in the middle of the court. I should check the court record, too. What evidence have I? There is the newspaper. Experiment sketch that shows that the guy could have been dropped. Crossbow. Green cloth from an exploded balloon. Photograph of the victim, who I guess we're going to say is the waxwork. I wonder if at some point we're going to look at the body of this waxwork and see if there is a something stabbed into the chest. Although they could have repaired that. Autopsy report of Mr. Asman, who died from a wound to the chest that pierced the heart and also a broken vertebra from a sudden fall. Screwdriver with a distinctive handle. It was poking through the base of it was poking through the grill in the base of what remains of the kinesis machine. So that did not get, quote unquote teleported, which would mean that why is there a bloody screwdriver here? Whether what's his name was killed or not, like whether he actually ended up being dead or not, they wouldn't have stabbed him with a screwdriver. I don't know. Maybe this is planted because they were like, oh, when he shows up when we drop him on the other side, he's gonna have a broken back from falling, but he should also be stabbed. So we'll stab the dummy ahead of time, put some blood on there, and then leave a bloody screwdriver on the. This is the conspirators doing this. Strange. I don't know if I get it. This is the green balloon getting shot. Photograph of Drebber from 10 years ago, which is strange. I don't know how this is going to be relevant. Wooden birdcage that is damaged at the bottom, even though everybody said that the one that was teleported fell upside down, so the top should have been damaged. So this one was... there must have been a switcheroo. This camera that has some blood on it. The camera from around the neck of the waxwork exhibit in the special, the waxwork in the special exhibit. But the picture is missing, so we don't know who took a picture of what, or when, or why there is blood on it. Broken glass, we kind of already used that. I don't think we'll use it again. Did I ever examine it? This piece of glass is almost as thick as... Oh, I think I did. Yes. If you were to compare it to a human, only Mr. Sholmes has such thick skin. There's really no need for such a comparison, Mr. Naruhodo, as you well know. Anyway, it can only be from the Crystal Tower, surely. Yes, I think so too. It was probably made especially to meet the demands of that great structure. Science trophy that I really don't know how we're going. This is gonna be the final thing. They're gonna be like, but where can you pour your wine into? There's nothing here in the courtroom that could hold a bottle of wine. We'll go, objection, science trophy, not guilty. This, we don't have a key to unlock this, but we assume that underneath is going to be, Odie Asmund's face. That he is actually the professor, or was. I don't know if he's alive or dead. The probably fake autopsy of the professor from 10 years ago that, Courtney did. We already pointed out here that the metal floor has collapsed. Or that somebody could have fallen through, that Odie was dropped through the floor when the explosion happened. And then this saying that Drebber only gets paid if Mr. Asmund is still alive. Giving him a non-motive, a motive against killing him. Even though it's very odd that it would be worded that way. So then, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby convene the proceedings of this court. Counsel for the defense and prosecution, are you ready and able to continue? The prosecution is ready, my lord. Yes, my lord. The defense is also ready. As the court is aware, the case under our scrutiny began with a damaging incident at the Great Exhibition. Yet we now find ourselves embroiled in the details of a convicted felon who was sent to the gallows a decade ago. This trial has certainly defied all expectation. Now, wait till you see the next trial. That's the final one, I guess. As seems to be the fate of all trials in which this Nipponese is involved, my lord. So then, let us begin our explanation of the defense's assertion that the waxwork was cardinally involved in this matter. Lord Van Zieks? My lord? Are we still awaiting the arrival of Madame Two Spells? Not at all. She is in the antechamber as we speak and ready to be summoned. Very well. Blind Umpire is now hosting. The trial of the century, or something. It is, but it's the wrong century, because this was 100 years ago that this happened. At once, my lord. Bailiff, show Madame Two Spells to the stand. Things are about to become a lot more intense now the blind umpire is here. If Drebber is responsible, as I'm sure he is, it means he must have had an accomplice in Dr. Sith, even though I only guessed. And what connects the pair of them is the waxwork. Yes, the model of the professor. That's the key to the link between these otherwise unrelated individuals. It's a tenuous link, admittedly, but at present it's all we have to go on. Oh, she's working on that on the stand. She's gonna multitask for us. Blind, did you look at any of the patch notes? Like, the full patch notes dropped, and man, PvP has changed a lot. I don't know if you might never have done any PvP at all, but wow, every single class now has like completely different abilities now, including everyone has their own limit break. And some of them are very interesting. Like, they really have gone out of their way to make an entire game inside of Final Fantasy XIV that a bunch of people are never going to play. Some people are going to play it a little bit, dabble in it, and go, oh, not for me, and leave. And to everyone else, it's like, this is a a whole freaking game. One of... Is that an Yes. Yes, Asians did invade this game as well. That's La Habrea. He has amnesia and cannot speak, but that's clearly La Habrea. I'm sure he'll get hit on the head by a wine bottle shortly and remember who he is. Like, one of the... Okay, what's one of the limit breaks? One of the limit breaks, is... Okay, so Dragoon does a jump, but it actually works like old Final Fantasy jumps. You jump and you're gone off the map. You're untargetable for 5 seconds, and then 5 seconds later you land, and wherever you landed, like, everybody there takes damage. So you can either use it to jump and get away, or you can use it to jump and close the gap, or just to, like, dodge something that's bad. Warrior gets like a Fusroda shout that everybody in a cone loses the ability to put on a guard in addition to taking a bunch of damage, and I forget what else happens. The really cool one, I forget if it's Sage or Astrologian. I think it's Sage, actually. Or, no, I forget who it is. Either Sage or Astrologian puts out a bubble, and for the duration of the bubble, I think it's like 10 seconds, and they get to reposition it once during the limit break, if they want. All enemies inside the bubble constantly take damage, and allies inside the bubble can't be damaged by enemies that are outside of it. So it's like a ranged shield. Like, if you're gonna attack, you need to come into the bubble and take damage. But the most interesting one, the one that I'm sure we're gonna get 100 million people memeing about, is that Samurai actually gets Zantetsuken, which is Odin's attack. You do a charge, and it does a ton of damage to everyone that you hit along the path, but also Samurai has a parry move where they put on a buff, and for 3 seconds, for a couple seconds, anyone who hits them takes damage and gets a debuff. Anybody who has that debuff from attacking the Samurai, if they get hit by Zantetsuken, it's just an instant kill. So there's gonna be expect all of these highlight videos of the, Omae wa mou shindeiru, or whatever, as the Samurai, charges through a whole party and all 5 of them just drop dead. Amazing. Gill toss? Nobody has gill toss, but, maybe someday, who knows? They could go anywhere with this now, with PvP, putting in, new PvP modes. If it does, it's going to be so unbalanced to start with. People are going to find broken combinations of things to do. Alright, back to court. Back to Asians. State your name and occupation for the court, please.
My name is Madame Esmeralda Two-Spells. I'm a waxwork artisan, and the proprietress of the Madame Two-Spells Museum of Waxwork. You will have to pardon me for working as I testify. My new exhibit must open very soon. I didn't think that was how you did waxwork. Just hacking away with a chisel? Oh, so he finally gets a statue, does he? Now there are 2 of them in the world. Oh my, what expression is she carving into that face?
A number! I don't know how to count. A number of days ago, a particular waxwork model was stolen from your museum. Can you confirm this?
Oui, that is true. At first, we believed it had been kidnapped.
A waxwork model? Kidnapped?
Yes, my lord. There was a demand for ransom money left behind by the culprit. However, according to what I have just been told outside the courtroom, that was not the true reason.
I understand it was utilized as a substitute for the body of a murder victim?
At present, that is no more than conjecture proposed by the defense. This is the victim of the case in question, Mr. Odie Asman.
But of course, I know him well. He is a part of my odious personages exhibit. I detest to say what is evident, but Mr. Asman does not resemble the professor at all. But did she, she made this waxwork, and she's never seen the professor, right? Nobody has. Nobody except the secret people. I don't know. Yes, but perhaps their faces are very similar. Are you suggesting that we should see now the demasked visage of the professor? I have here the key, but it is strictly forbidden to open the lock.
This is absurd.
Pardon?
I don't know what face you've carved into your fancy figure beneath that mask. But clearly, it won't be that of the actual killer.
If nobody's seen the professor, how do you know that the statue doesn't look like him? That is kind of what Phoenix just said. Well, he said it without saying that much, but it's basically like, hey, maybe they do look similar. You don't know. They think they know.
Indeed. The man's identity was never made public, after all. The trial took place in a closed court. The proceedings were strictly confidential.
Also high. High faded.
The condemned man was summarily executed. His identity remains a closely guarded national secret. There is no possible way that a repository of tawdry exhibits could get its hands on that information.
He called you tawdry. Oh, well, and she called him a quelled homage. So I guess they're even. It would seem you are unaware of the Two Spells principles. What principles? The family Two Spells has always prided itself on sculpting its models à la perfection. Every detail, including the visage, is fashioned with complete fidelity. Et voilà our principles. She is suddenly appropriately French. There is a well-known legend about the Two Spells. Open your book! Open your book that has restaurant menus and the entire Wikipedia and also well-known legends about the Two Spells waxworks from the time of the French Revolution. Do it. Open it. She's not opening it. She memorized the book. A member of the Two Spells family who is said to have made a waxwork of the Queen, who was executed. Oui, that is true. It was a century ago now. I think we already... Did we already make that joke? Certainly. But we can make it again. Give again, the skipper too. I believe the Queen's face was carved in the minutes following her death, actually at the guillotine site. You are correct. The model on display is still in the House of Horrors. The Two Spells will stop at nothing. No, see? She lives right on the border of France and Germany. That's why she slips into a German accent sometimes. We'll stop at nothing to obtain the faithful replica of our subjects.
Dear me, a somewhat disturbing tenacity of purpose.
It is the only way to obtain a truly lifelike representation of the subject. And it has been my family's secret for generations. Do you mean to say that beneath that mask... Oui, the true visage of the killer is there.
This is ludicrous. It's out of the question.
The professor spread terror throughout Great Britain. As a result, French accents are exhausting. As a result, the Madame Two Spells special exhibit remains extremely popular, even today. The killer, emerging from his own grave, it is a sight to behold. You should come.
I think, Madame, it would be beneficial to hear your formal testimony on this matter. You will explain every detail of this macabre model, and your personal involvement in its creation.
Luxembourg, that's not real. I know my geology. With pleasure. The special exhibit in the House of Horrors is based on a rumor that shocked society in London. An impression of the visage was taken directly from the corpse in accordance with Two Spell's family principles. Wait, like you poured hot wax on his face? I enlisted the aid of the gravedigger and created a mold for the head in the cemetery just before the interment. I hid myself until he gave me a signal. I was there for a very long time that night. As dawn approached, I was very worried that I could be discovered. What?
The gravedigger? The man sanctioned this?
Oui. I will do all that is necessary to achieve the true resemblance my family is celebrated for. Nobody else knew, only the gravedigger. What harm did it do, huh?
So you truly saw it, the face of that monster.
For anybody who's perhaps missed part of this case, the reason Van Zieks is so upset is that the professor killed his brother. His brother was one of the 5 people that was serial murdered. Naturally, I was aware at the time that his identity was a secret. But Two Spells would not be Two Spells if we did not insist on absolute fidelity in our sculptures.
I don't believe this. I myself have seen the special exhibit at your museum, madame. A truly blood-curdling scene in which the murderer is emerging from his own grave.
The scene it depicts was the subject of many rumors in London 10 years ago. I have here a newspaper from the time. The special exhibit was based upon the picture in this article. It was a most detailed account of what happened, as reported by the eyewitness who saw it. The what? The Bal Masque of the Great Blaze? Her Majesty Queen Victoria herself? I see. Krakatoa eruption, that happened the same day as this guy escaping from the grave?
Man rises from the grave. It is too absurd for words or numbers.
The public enjoy absurdity, monsieur. That is why I have reproduced the scene as carefully as possible in my museum. And it's a waxwork from that exhibit that was stolen some days before the incident at the Great Exhibition, wasn't it? That is correct. The professor you see before you here.
Most puzzling. Counsel for the defense, proceed with the cross-examination.
This waxwork links Drebber to Dr. Sith a little bit. And there has to be some reason for that, which hasn't yet come to light. But I'll find it. I'll get to the bottom of what really happened. I'll prove that Dr. Sith and Drebber were in on this crime together. And that rumor would be a 10-year-old tale now, but one that no Londoner would ever forget.
All right. I know just what you're talking about, I think.
Of course. It couldn't be anything else.
Yes, that story will never disappear.
The tale of the condemned killer rising from the dead. That is the central attraction of my House of Horrors. The rumor was whispered all over the city, and it was like this. It was in Lowgate Cemetery, behind the prison, in the dead of night after the execution of the killer. The interred professor slid back the stone slab covering his tomb and emerged from his grave. A young man who witnessed this felt a scream welling up inside him, but an instant later he heard an ear-splitting gunshot from over his shoulder. What? The bullet struck the emerging corpse and he fell motionless once more. Oh, I didn't hear any of this. The scream finally found its way from the mouth of the young witness, who turned, ran for his life. The corpse climbed out of his own grave. And then somebody shot him? Who? Who was it? Nobody knows, even today. But remember, it was just a rumor, perhaps nothing more than a ghost story. The good people of London, they love stories like this. That is why it was in every newspaper across the capital. But was it just a story? Charles Darwin to receive medal, I think it said. I mean, this is exactly the scene that can be seen today at your museum, isn't it? Oui. The special exhibit was modeled on that very illustration. For a while afterwards, the contents of that article were reproduced in every newspaper imaginable. Madame, might I say something? Please, go ahead, mademoiselle. When something is described as a rumor, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's entirely made up. I believe that often rumors contain elements of the truth. Ah, I see that people from the East can be just as astute as the people of Europe. Can we be sure, for instance, that the professor's execution was successful? It is not possible for the dead to come back to life. Sorry? People die when they are killed. Don't you watch anime? 10 years ago, I was there, in Lowgate Cemetery. After the criminal known as the Professor was killed by hanging, I took a wax impression of his visage from the corpse just before it was interred. So I can assure you, the man was dead. I see. Or he was in a coma, or she's lying. It would certainly appear that the condemned man suffered the intended fate. Man, this could be anything. It could have been that they killed somebody did the professor... There's a lot left to this case.
Hold it!
Is that true of every waxwork in your museum, then? It is. Assuming the subject is dead, of course. Live subjects have to cooperate in a similar way. I have letters from imprisoned criminals all the time, you know. What sort of letters? When my time comes, please make a waxwork of me. I loved that show growing up. It was you, Red Herring. When my time comes, please make a waxwork of me. Comme ça. No! My museum is famous, monsieur. To be made into a waxwork is an honor, and for some criminals, a symbol of status even. Because nothing says hardened criminal better than wax. And it is thanks to one killer in particular that my museum has gained such popularity in London. I refer to the star of the special exhibit, of course, the Professor. Whose form you claim to have captured by taking an impression from the actual corpse. She's like, yes, inmates. I write to inmates all the time, and they write back, I want you to pour hot wax all over me. There are no exceptions to the principles of two spells.
Hold it!
Surely that's illegal, isn't it? Isn't that betraying the public? It would seem the proprietress of this repository of novelties was blinded by monetary greed. It had nothing to do with money. The man is part of London's criminal history. That is why I had to sculpt him, to record this history. It is the raison d'être of the Two Spells Museum. But if the man was convicted in a closed court and sent for immediate execution, then surely nobody but the members of the judiciary present know the killer's true identity. I assure you, behind that mask is hidden the true face of the professor.
Do you realize what you are saying? The professor's identity is a national secret.
I understand. And now that the truth about the special exhibit has been revealed, it must perhaps close.
Of course it will, as will your entire museum if you don't tread carefully, madame.
That could be another interesting chapter in the history of my family, I think. Don't you? So 10 years ago, on the night of the professor's execution, you took a wax impression of his face from the corpse. Oui, exactement.
Hold it!
You were there longer than you expected to be. I had some difficulties in capturing the subject's form correctly. As I removed the mask, the mouth of the cadaver fell open, and I had some problems with the chin. Dare I ask? The man had been dead for a short while already, you see. His muscles were relaxing, and consequently his chin would not align itself correctly. Oh dear, what a horrible thought. Under normal circumstances, I would have an assistant with me. However, that night I was alone, and as a consequence, I missed my preferred window of time. What do you mean?
When I take the impression of a visage of a cadaver, I always wait until 3 hours after death.
Why 3 hours? Is that amount of time significant?
It is because of rigor mortis.
Wrigley Mortis? Thump! Wikipedia to the rescue. It's the name given to a phenomenon that occurs in recently dead bodies. Also, did you want to order lunch? As a rule, 3 hours post-death, the muscles in the body begin to stiffen. By approximately 10 hours post-death, the entire body is completely rigid and inflexible. And then from that point on, the muscles slowly start to revert to their relaxed state. The effect is often used to estimate the time of death when a body is discovered. Well, that was an education, if a slightly scary one. Also, no idea if it's true. Didn't that come up before? In maybe one of the other Phoenix Wright games? I'm like, rigor mortis? That could be completely made up. I wouldn't know. That could completely be a Hollywood thing. I mean, I guess it's not. But it totally could be. I know absolutely nothing about the reality of forensic autopsy. If we were like, oh, what about rigor mortis? I'm like, rigor mortis ain't real. What are you talking about?
As the Mademoiselle says, rigor mortis commences 3 hours after death, and it starts in the jaw.
I see. So that's why you wait.
Before that time, the mouth falls open, and it is very difficult to do my work.
Ugh. It's getting hard for me to do my work with all this talk of corpses. Why don't you just have the corpse eat a piece of caramel like Sherlock Holmes has, and then its teeth will get stuck together? Whatever it was significant. Tell me more. The information about rigor mortis that you just shared with us, would you mind including it in your formal testimony? I believe it could be significant.
Of course, I do not mind at all.
I can't help feeling that after this latest topic, the atmosphere in the courtroom has become extremely... You're fired. I realize I don't pay you. I realize I also don't get paid, but you're fired. Madame, kindly amend your testimony as discussed.
Bien sûr.
So that should contradict something. Probably this. Death by hanging confirmed at midnight. Actually, maybe this doesn't... Maybe not yet. Because we don't know what time she was doing this. Maybe if we press, she'll say what time she was doing it. So sorry you're gonna miss the boat. Better leave now. Rigor mortis being the phenomenon you described, whereby the corpse becomes stiff after death. I think you said that it starts at the jaw, about 3 hours post-death, is that right?
Oui, exactly.
Of course, the exact duration depends a little on the season. I didn't realize a waxwork artisan would be so well versed in the subject.
No, that is only elementary knowledge in the field of legal medicine.
Well, I had no idea about it, but maybe I won't admit to my ignorance about forensic science.
I could ask my father to give you a very simple primer if you like.
I think corpses should be your domain. I'm not good with them.
Oh dear, I'll do my very best.
Hold it!
You say that dawn was approaching? What was the time of day then, approximately? Well, I could not say. But when I left the cemetery with my utensils and wax, the morning light was becoming visible.
The execution took place on 17th June, which had... 17th June, which had the earliest sunrise of that year.
Indeed it did. First light would have been at around 4:40 in the morning. That really is early. But is it accurate to London's longitude? No, latitude?
The fact is, I had very little time, so I finished my work in half an hour.
Who was Dawn, and why was she approaching? And why was the East and Juliet was the sun? Now wait, Shakespeare was the last trial. We're not going back to that nonsense.
It was necessary to complete the impression and bury the body before daybreak, of course. If somebody had discovered me there, it would have been a catastrophe, so I had to hurry.
Is it me, or does Mr. Sholmes seem to be taking shape more quickly now, too? You certainly appear to go to extraordinary lengths for your work, madame. I wonder, is what she just said particularly significant? Sure. Madam, those details about how long it took you to complete the sculpture and the early sunrise, could you include them in your testimony? I believe they may be significant.
Of course, if you would like me to. You're quite right, Mr. Naruhodo. It is intriguing. A sunrise at 4 in the morning would be absolutely unimaginable at home, wouldn't it?
Would it? Not quite what I meant by significant. Kindly amend your formal testimony then, madame.
With pleasure, my lord.
So, well, this is the last thing to press on, so I'll press on it first. I guess I'm going to... I guess it's going to be the autopsy on this statement saying that it was Dawn, because that does contradict the fact that he was hanged and killed, that he died at midnight, because that's too long for rigor mortis. Did you have reason to believe you might be discovered once the sun came up or something?
I had paid the gravedigger money to keep my little secret, of course. But with the morning light, I knew that the warden from the prison would commence his patrol of the area.
Yeah, it can't patrol when it's dark out. That's silly. Imagine a guard patrolling to make sure crimes don't happen during nighttime. Couldn't you have just paid the warden, too?
I had already paid the gravedigger, as I said. You cannot buy the silence of everyone, or the secret is no longer a secret, huh?
The sunrise was at 4:40 a.m. that day, which means that it would have been around 4 when you began your sculpting work.
Oui, that must be correct. That would be when the gravedigger gave me the signal to come out of hiding.
So that's all I have to go on. What's your feeling, Mr. Naruhodo? For some reason, Dr. Sith went along with Drebber's plan. Now, if that's really true, then the professor is the only one thing we know of that links the pair of them. So I feel sure that waxwork must be a clue to this mystery somehow.
In that case, we must use this cross-examination to uncover exactly what it means. Otherwise, the jurors are sure to revert their leanings, and our trial will be over.
I agree. But interestingly, uncovering what the professor has to do with all of this means more to Lord Van Zieks than anyone. That's the impression I'm getting anyway.
Yes, as do I.
After all, he has a profound connection to the professor as well.
Objection!
No? Is it on here then? But surely I had to get her to add the other thing before they'll accept this.
Objection!
All right, this is correct. It's so correct that I'm going to slam my fist on the desk. Madam Two Spells, I have here an autopsy report that was filed 10 years ago now. It confirms the death of the professor following his execution at the gallows.
And is that the problem?
I believe it is, because your testimony and a particular detail in the report completely contradict one another. Why? Are you going to explain yourself, my Nipponese friend? According to her testimony, Madame Two Spells was creating her wax impression just before dawn, and at that time rigor mortis had not yet set in. Am I correct so far, Madame?
You are, yes.
As I said, the stiffening of the jaw is the first sign of rigor mortis, 2 to 3 hours after death. But the man's chin was limp, so he cannot have been dead for a long time. But on the other hand, if you look at Dr. Sith's report, it quite clearly states the following. Death by hanging confirmed at midnight, 17th June. No! If the professor indeed died at midnight that day, then by the time you were sculpting his face, rigor mortis would already have set in.
Oui, yes, you are right. The chin, it would have been completely stiff.
In other words, this report is wrong.
Objection!
No coroner makes mistakes when recording the time of death. The very idea is absurd. In that case, there's only one possible conclusion. The execution didn't actually take place at the stated time. Impossible! Order! Order! Counsel! This is beyond folly! Is it? Not only do you indict the author of the report, Dr. Sith, but you also implicate members of the staff at Barclay Prison where the execution took place. By heck! Extraordinary! Not in my day! My learned friend appears to have overlooked one very crucial fact. What fact? The professor died that night without question.
He did. Of course he did. I moved the man's limp jaw with my own hands. There was no...
Yes, the professor died that night. But what if he didn't die at the gallows? Didn't die at... Are you insane? What exactly are you suggesting did happen in that case? It's almost impossible to believe, but it would explain the link. There must be such things as ghosts. It's the only explanation. Between Dr. Sith, the professor, and that one other person of interest. I have evidence that will explain exactly what I'm suggesting happened that night. Do I? Do I? Counsel, present the evidence at once. The evidence that allegedly explains what real... That's very vague. That's very vague.
Black is white, up is down, and short is long. And something about Colonel Sanders started screaming. Mad Sheep? The Great Stink? This was the most eventful day of the entire decade. Mad Sheep, Great Stink, Copley Metal, the Great Blaze, Krakatoa erupted. It was like, oh, and zombies, I guess. I mean, I guess I could present this article and say, oh, he wasn't dead at first, but then he was shot later? Let's try it. Yes. What happened that night is written very plainly in this newspaper article. Executed criminal returns in the dead of night at local cemetery.
You're suggesting it was a corpse coming back from the dead. Coming back from the dead now.
Well, if this article is to be believed, yes, the professor, assumed dead following his execution, emerged from his grave. Arise from your grave. How did I miss that opportunity? Throwing a little Altered Beast. A little Sega, little 1994 probably. And was killed again.
Objection. Don't be a fool. That's simply a rumor published by the gutter press.
Can you be certain of that?
Are you serious?
The point is, as the article says, there was a witness to what happened.
My word, yes indeed.
Marie, the young man who stole into the cemetery by chance that night.
Objection. Of course there was a witness. The story didn't write itself, but obviously the man made it all up. And in any case, it was 10 years ago now. There would surely be no hope of finding him.
Isn't it frickin' Drebber? On the contrary, my lord. We all know this witness well.
What? Are you suggesting, counsel, that you've identified the person in question? That you know who claims to have seen these utterly incredible events take place?
Yes, my lord. In fact, you could say he's right here before my very eyes.
You will substantiate your latest claim now, then, counsel. Who is the alleged witness of this staggering scene from the cemetery 10 years ago?